Welcome back to the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. I'm Joe Noga, joined by Paul Hoynes. Hoynes, the Guardians win 6 out of 7 games on their final road trip before the All-Star break. After losing 10 straight, they go on the road, they sweep Houston, they take 3 out of 4, including splitting a doubleheader against the White Sox in Chicago. Just what does that mean for the momentum for this team heading into the All-Star break now as they sort of scatter to the four corners of the earth? And Stephen Kwan heads to Atlanta with Jose Ramirez opting out of the All-Star game. Just, where are the Guardians right now? What do we think about this team as, they close basically on an up note after that, really rough stretch of 10 games before that?
Yeah, Joe, it means we don't know anything about this team yet. With the trade deadline approaching, they are 46 and 49 in the break. That's compared to 58 and 37 last year when they went into the All-Star break and were headed toward the AL Central title. Today they are, 12 out in the division, 4.5 out in the wild card with 5 for 5 teams in front of them for the third and final wild card spot. So, Joe, it's still a coin flip. It all depends what this front office feels. Are they close? Do they have a shot at the wild card? Or is it time to kind of gather their resources and try to improve for next year by trading some players, trading some veteran guys?
Yeah, and I think either direction that they go, if they go all in and try and make the postseason, try to pass the 5 teams ahead of them in the wild card race, I think that offers something to watch and something to be excited about. If they decide to go in the other direction and start calling up the young players who are available for them to sort of get a look at and add to their roster, I think that's an exciting time too. But obviously we want to see them compete for a postseason berth. We've talked in the past about are they going to be buyers, are they going to be sellers as that trade deadline approaches? What did you find out about the availability of some of their more valuable trade assets if that comes to pass?
Yeah, and talking to a couple of sources, Joe, one from around Major League Baseball, from some contending teams. Right now, the Guardians are telling these the phone calls that they're getting the teams that are inquiring about Emmanuel Clase and Cade Smith, that those guys are not for sale, that they're not going to trade them, that they want to keep those pieces. The sources I talked to, they said they're pretty firm about that. That's coming from the obviously the guys, the decision makers in Cleveland's front office. But we all know that can change, and we all know that what Chris Antonetti told us. The last 48 hours of the trade with the deadline approaching at July 1st, the closer that gets, the more deals get made. The pressure of the deadline, creates deals, creates, needs, and teams are more willing to go all in if they feel they have a chance to get to the postseason. So we'll have to see. But right now, Clase and Cade Smith are not going anywhere. And I could see, I understand why Cade Smith, they say hands off Cade Smith. Young guy, closer in waiting, power arm. Clase, is closer to, he's got 1 guaranteed year left. Add like $6 million, then 2 club options. So, he's kind of sitting there, but, he's still a great deal. We saw him pitch 2 innings yesterday against the White Sox for the win. Just the third time he's done that as in Guardians. He's very much at the top of his game, right?
Yeah, and I've said on the podcast in the past, before, I think those last 2 $10 million option years for Emmanuel Clase, another team will be paying those years. I truly believe that the Guardians won't be picking up the tab on that remaining 2 years, $10 million each. So yeah, if it doesn't happen this year, then this time next year, you're certainly hearing the Emmanuel Clase trade rumors at full volume. But we'll wait until then. Anybody else, any other veterans you think that could be in the conversation there? We've seen just over the last week, over that last road trip, Carlos Santana come up with some big hits. He could certainly be playing his way right into some sort of trade conversation if a team has a need at first base, and there are several teams that do. He might not be the number one option for them, but I could see that happening. Lane Thomas being on the injured list again certainly sort of hamstrings their options for trading him. What are you hearing about other players besides Cade Smith and Emmanuel Clase?
Yeah, there was a lot of interest in Lane Thomas, Joe. But like you said, he's been on the IL 3 times. He's still, doing. He's not close to being ready. It doesn't sound like doing some light baseball activities. So I would think, that kind of puts him, kind of on the back burner, so to speak, as a trade option. Carlos Santana, yes, very much so. But I don't think you're going to get a whole lot back. What are you going to get back for Carlos Santana? 39. Oh, he's 39. He's still, very good first baseman. He can give you some pop off the bench, clubhouse guy, but you're not going to shake the money tree on that one, or the talent tree. A weird guy that came up, Joe. This is going to shock you, but I've heard that Daniel Schneemann, a couple teams have kicked the tires on Schneemann, but like a kind of a valuable multi-talent, multi-position guy, got a little pop. He's been a solid contributor this year. So you never know what a team needs until they start looking around. But that was a name that kind of stuck in the back of my head.
Yeah, and with Schneemann playing mostly in second base, that's a position on the infield where they have a lot of depth, and they certainly have a number one pick. Eventually who's going to be back on the field and playing in games in Travis Bazzana, who they need to clear room for. But Schneemann sort of taking up a lot of the innings and a lot of the opportunities right now for that team, and doing a nice job. I can see why teams might value what he brings to the table. Let's jump back and talk about the series finale there in Chicago yesterday. There was a pretty unique moment, a pretty significant moment when we talk about deadline trades. Aaron Savali, once a staple in the Cleveland rotation, a foundation from that 2016 draft that along with Shane Bieber and Zach Plesac was thought to be sort of one of the legs of the whole rotation there, the whole a big piece, and he was eventually traded away in 2023 in exchange for Kyle Manzardo. Manzardo now up and being productive with the Guardians in the lineup, hits a 3-run home run off of Savali in a critical situation in that game, gives the Guardians the lead yesterday. And immediately our friend Zach Meisel tweeted out the Guardians won the trade, even if it was 2 years later. Just to see that, and they were shouting it in the dugout as well. I heard a hot mic situation on the broadcast where somebody said it in the dugout. I mean, it probably was Hedges. I don't know. But just what's your take on Manzardo versus Savali and the Guardians coming out on top?
That was so cool, Joe. Saturday afternoon, we're standing around just after talking to Stephen Vogt in the dugout, and Savali comes over, says hello to some friends, former teammates. He's talking to guys, and then he goes, "I'm going to go over and introduce myself to Manzardo." And so, Manzardo's just standing there getting ready to hit. And, he goes over, they shake hands. Our buddy Tim Stebbins, from MLB.com took a picture of him. It was so weird, it was just like two guys that got traded for each other, and you don't see that very often, just them talking. And then Sunday they meet, they're facing each other. The first two confrontations go to Savali. He gets him out on a fly ball to center, strikes him out in the fourth inning, and then everything changed in the sixth inning. A first pitch home run, 14th of the season, second in as many games, and it was pretty much of a game changer, Joe. It ended Savali's day, and Savali had been great through 5 innings. They hadn't touched him, but he left a breaking ball up, and Manzardo crushed it. It was interesting confrontation. And yeah, you're right. Somebody did shout, "We win the trade" in the dugout.
And I believe it was Manzardo's fifth or sixth first pitch home run.
Six first pitch home runs.
6 out of his 14 home runs have been on the first pitch of an at bat. Pretty crazy stat. Just great moment for Kyle Manzardo, and one that he'll remember, I'm sure. Got later on in the game, we got to see Stephen Kwan basically put all of his all-star skills on display for us. Hoynesy, sometimes we talk too much about plays that don't get made. And in this case, it was Stephen Kwan, trying to make a sliding diving catch on a line drive to left field. The ball got past him. Eventually the run scored. But later in the game, in the 10th inning, pop fly towards the line in left field, and a ball that I don't think anybody thought Kwan was going to be able to get to. He runs it down. It would have been a fair ball had it dropped, and he basically saved the game for the Guardians with the tying run on second base at the time. He continues to show just that ability to come up with big plays and big moments, and this is why not only an all-star but a 3-time Gold Glover and probably on his way to a fourth.
Oh man, that was a great play, Joe. He ran forever on that ball. He was playing over toward the gap on, I believe it was Austin Slater who hit that ball, and the automatic runner is on second base. If that ball falls in, the runner scores, and probably Slater goes to third, maybe an inside the Parker. I don't know, but really, Stephen Vogt said after the game, if he doesn't make that catch, this is an entirely different game. And the other thing that stood out, Joe, like you said, the play in the 8th inning where he made the sliding attempt on Edgar Cuero, the ball got by him for a double. He said, excuse me, Kwan said, Kwan was saying, that there was some ego involved in that, in the catch, because he had made the mistake in the 8th inning. He said, I really had to catch that ball in the 10th, and he did, and it changed the game. It was that's a highlight catch, Joe. That was like the one where he dove into the stands in Seattle, where I think you were covering that game. That's right up there. That's a top 3 catch by Kwan.
Yeah, and you talk about defensive runs saved. That's clearly a defensive run saved in that instance, but it's also, win probability added. That's a winning play. That's a game that a play that changes a game and not just adds value, to his play in the outfield, but it, like you said, it completely wins the game for his team. So we've seen that in a couple of times. We saw him do that with a sliding catch and a double play in Houston last year. There are just plays that stand out in Stephen Kwan in left field. This is the reason why he's not the center fielder for the Guardians, because he's so good in left field that they can't move him off of that position. He just brings so much value there. Why mess with what you've got? It was the same argument that you had for not moving Andres Jimenez over to shortstop, when you know that they're a natural for that position. Kwan would be a natural in center field. I just think that they see the value that they have there in him playing in left field and not moving it.
Yeah, and then then in the top of the 10th, he hits the sacrifice fly that wins the game. So a great 10th inning by Kwan right there. They after losing that game Friday night, the second game of the doubleheader, that went into 11 innings, where they loaded the bases in the 10th and the 11th and couldn't score. Kwan gets the job done in the 10th inning on Sunday, and the Guardians go home happy.
Yeah, those big at bats with runners in scoring position, finally coming through with a big hit or a big plate appearance, I guess, for Kwan with that sacrifice fly. Very important. All right, we have an update on Chase DeLauter, and all of our conversations, lately have been about why isn't DeLauter up with the Guardians? Why haven't they made the move to call him up and promote him? And all of that was sort of predicated on, well, he's healthy now and he's playing, regularly, and he's showing, what he can do down there. Might not be the case, and I don't know how long it's been the case, but apparently Chase DeLauter not as healthy as we thought he was. What was the update that you got over the weekend about DeLauter?
Yeah, and talking to some people with the Guardians, they said DeLauter has been playing. A couple of days ago, they told me he's been playing injured. He's been playing with some nagging injuries. They wouldn't name the injuries, so to speak, but they said he's been doing this for a couple of weeks. His batting average, his numbers have slid. We're looking to see how he handles this. We want to see how he handles the grind at AAA, and if he's ready to handle it at the big league level. They said, we want this guy in the big leagues as much as the fans do. But and then on Saturday it came out that he was pulled from the lineup on Friday. He didn't play. I'm sorry, he was pulled from the lineup on Saturday and didn't play Sunday. And then the Guardians released the news that he was playing with a sore right wrist, that that he'll probably be in Cleveland over the break to be evaluated. So that's the update on DeLauder. That's why he's not in Cleveland right now as a player.
Yeah. Yeah, they said he suffered the bruise during batting practice, something like that.
Yeah, I
It
didn't get the
wasn't even.
reason how he got hurt.
Yeah, I had read that it was something in batting practice, or it wasn't in a game situation where he got hurt. So again, even more confusion and mystery on that. But for all the people, including podcasters and reporters who have been banging the drum for his promotion and addition to the roster, what are we waiting for here? And now we have a reason, and now we have the understanding as to why that hasn't happened, at least within the last week. Probably could have happened before that, and we wouldn't have been dealing with an injury in batting practice down in the minor leagues. More injury news, more updates. Shane Bieber had a good report, and we kind of get him going back to square one now with the build up there.
Yeah, he had the good 3-inning bullpen session on Thursday, threw again Sunday in Cleveland. Then he jumped on a plane. He's going to Goodyear, Arizona, where he'll throw a 2-inning simulated game, a rehab game, and we'll see how that goes on Tuesday. And after that, Joe, I would imagine he's coming back here and will start pitching for one of the affiliates in a rehab assignment.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that moving forward. Now he's sort of gotten past that speed bump, we'll call it, with the the flare up, as he was getting ready to make his AA debut on the rehab start. But we'll go back to square one. We'll see him sort of progress week by week and hopefully get updates there. He's set for somewhere around 30 to 40 pitches, maybe in Arizona. We expect that maybe an inning or two, maybe into a third inning, but we'll see how many times he gets up and down there.
Yeah, he threw 40 pitches Thursday, Joe. 41 pitches Thursday. So I would imagine, yeah, he's at least at that.
Yeah, it's eagerly awaiting sort of the next step for Bieber, and we'll see where that ends up. Hoynesy, we're at the All-Star break. Let's just get a feel for where this team is and what things are going on. What really stands out to you as maybe one of the big themes or the big highlights of the first half of the season? What stands out in your mind?
The positive I take out of the first half, Joe, is the development of the starting rotation. Really like the way they've put together a young rotation that's moving forward. The Luis Ortiz gambling investigation obviously has set that back a little bit. That's a concern. But I like the way Joey Cantillo has come up and filled in for him. You've got Bieber, maybe on track to fit into that rotation as well. But the guy that stands out to me, Joe, is Slade Ciccone. Love him, man. I mean, he's like, I think he's made 10 starts, 10, 11 starts for this team. And his last one was probably his best, 7 scoreless innings against Houston. Just really young, big, strong guy that looks like he's only going to get better and fits in well with who do we got? We've got a Bybee. We've got Logan Allen, who's been dynamite. Gavin Williams has had his moments. Just really kind of taking a big step forward here.
Yeah, I think Ciccone filling in one of those spots. I think maybe one of those spots was sort of earmarked for a Bieber or eventually a John Means or something, and somebody else to come and take one of those spots. I think Ciccone has really laid claim to a future sort of position in this rotation just based on his last dozen or so outings. It's been great. All right, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. We'll be back to talk what the Guardians did on the first day of the draft, and we'll check in with you then. Hoynesy, we'll get an update here soon.
Good deal, Joe.